Hello, my name is Cyclones Oz, and we now have Tropical Cyclone Kirrily located in the Coral Sea offshore from the Queensland coastline. It's expected to make landfall tomorrow, probably around the evening hours, and it has been named into a tropical cyclone about 6 hours earlier, and it's looking pretty decent actually. There's a lot of thunderstorm activity blowing up around the center of the storm. The center of circulation is located about here. That's Lihu Reef right here. So it's just towards the west of Lihu Reef. And this is your quick forecast update on this tropical cyclone as we get into the evening hours. If you're brand new here, please do consider subscribing and also click the join button down below to get access to some exclusive perks. But let's get straight into this video. The storm looking better than what I expected, which means it's strengthening a little bit more than what I've initially expected. So it's likely to be a little bit stronger upon landfall. I reckon Category 2 strength on landfall is a very safe bet to assume at this time. It's probably going to be at or near Category 2 status. Still, a couple of details really need to be ironed out. I want to wait and see what this cyclone looks like in about 8 hours time, and if I'm awake then I will be giving you the latest information on this channel, so yeah, make sure you are following for that information. But if this storm is still blowing up some decent thunderstorm convection or thunderstorm activity, as you can see with the blacks and the white on this infrared satellite imagery here, that's very intense thunderstorms blowing up around the center, and that's where the storm gets its power from. You can think of it like that. And if it's still got those in around 8 hours time, then I'd be more inclined to say that this storm is likely going to be a little bit stronger than what we were initially expecting. However, we're going to take a look at the forecast right now. You can see centered here, what's that, about 17 degrees south, 151 degrees east. It's strengthening at this time. The Access G3 model calls for some pretty substantial strengthening actually into Thursday morning, deepening it down into the high 970 millibars, or about 980 millibars, and it makes landfall just on top of Cape Bowling Green. We're back to that location again after a couple of chops and changes. We're expecting it to go around Townsville, but I would say a landfall on Cape Bowling Green with sustained winds of around 110 kilometers an hour, and what's peak wind gusts, you're probably looking at close to 140 or 150 kilometers an hour in one or two spots. So still very destructive wind gusts in the center of circulation. I think the Bureau of Meteorology might kind of be lowballing. They've highlighted the possibility for 130 kilometer an hour wind gusts in their warning zone from I believe it's Serena down around Mackay ways, and then up towards Ingham and Cardwell. That's where their cyclone warning is right now, and that includes locations like Townsville, Ayr, Bowen, Airlie Beach, Proserpine, Mackay, and inland to Charters Towers and Ravenswood. So some strong winds are expected through that area as this storm moves through. It's going to be a strong cyclone. It will certainly be a rough Thursday evening, that's for sure. If you're in Queensland right now, your preparations should certainly be coming to an end. You should be 100% prepared for this cyclone right now. Hamilton Island already receiving winds gusting to 74 kilometers an hour, so winds are really starting to pick up along the Queensland coastline now, and we're already seeing some pretty significant wind gusts on the offshore weather stations where the pressure is currently dropping as well. If we take a look at the rainfall actually, you can see it's a relatively messy system. In fact, I'm going to try and find the center of circulation from the models. I don't think there's actually a defined center of circulation on radar imagery. I mean, barely. It's probably a little bit too far out to see still. But there's a lot of shower activity and a lot of rain activity moving through on the system's southern sides. And because it's got more thunderstorm activity, I dare to say that there might actually be a little bit more rainfall on the southern side of this system as opposed to the northern side. We were expecting it to blow up some thunderstorm convection at this point, because I mean, how could it not with the conditions that it's got ahead of it? But it's a very difficult forecast. I'm just going to leave it at that, really. Rainfall is a very difficult factor to forecast from tropical cyclones in terms of exact locations. You generally only get about 6 hours of warning, and I've been trying to give forecasts about 3 days in advance, so I do apologize for my huge misses in some locations. There will be places where I've labeled significant rainfall totals that won't end up materializing, and I do apologize for that. This cyclone has been a big learning curve for me as well. Still though, quite a lot of rainfall expected around Townsville and Mackay as this storm makes landfall, especially around Townsville. We've seen places pick up to 300 millimeters, which will fall in torrential bursts. It's a cyclone, so the core will pack a punch in terms of destructive winds and also some very heavy rainfall. Beyond its landfall, the forecast becomes a lot more unpredictable. The Access model has been highlighting the possibility of torrential rainfall inland through Queensland, but it's so unpredictable at this point. We've been looking at 1,000 millimeters down around Birdsville, and now we're looking at nothing nothing for Birdsville, and that's all in a 24-hour time frame. So a really difficult forecast, and I'm going to refrain from commenting. But as this storm moves inland, it's likely to dump quite a lot of rainfall across some locations around Mount Isa and Cloncurry, and inland or further towards the coastline around Maxwellton and Hughenden. It's looking a little bit more unlikely that it's going to head down towards the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast. I don't expect that as a possibility anymore. There's no real model support from that. However, there will be a bunch of thunderstorms that move through the area next weekend that could deliver some pretty significant rainfall totals. We'll be giving coverage on that on this channel and also on the Force 13 AU channel as well. So make sure you subscribe to both if that's your cup of tea. So yeah, rainfall, a significant threat. I feel like we're so close to landfall at this point. Everyone's preparations should be coming to a completion right now. Maybe your final preparations in Townsville, getting your sandbags ready, your beers on ice for the system. But I mean, but before you go to sleep tonight, your preparations should certainly be done, because areas between Bowen and Mackay, including Airlie Beach and Hamilton Island, they'll be under full-blown cyclone conditions by around midnight tonight, and they'll extend into tomorrow morning as everything blows around in my office for some reason. So yeah, Townsville, you've got a little bit more time up your sleeve. You might get to a little bit of tomorrow morning to prepare for this tropical cyclone, but landfall will happen around 6 or 7 p.m. Local time. Actually, let's take a look at the Bureau of Meteorology forecast, which is right here for Tropical Cyclone Kirrily. They're expecting a landfall probably at around 7 p.m. local time on top of Townsville, and that would bring the destructive core ashore from anywhere between Cardwell down to probably around Ayr, or somewhere between Ayr and Bowen. I think Girra is a little town located between Ayr and Bowen, or it'll be Home Hill or something. That's where the destructive winds are expected to occur. And then the forecast is relatively uncertain as it heads inland. You can see the Bureau of Meteorology stalls the system, which is sort of expected, but it is named earlier than what we initially thought, which is interesting, because we were talking yesterday, we had literally no idea on what was going to happen on this system in terms of its naming. In fact, I was skeptical that it was ever going to get named at all, but it looks like it's going to be a story of intensification right up towards landfall, and it could put on a couple of knots, that's for sure. A high-end Category 2 landfall is not out of the realm of possibilities. I'm hoping that everyone in the affected, or the expected affected areas, has prepared for a Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone impact, because that's the worst case scenario at this point. And again, it's always best to be prepared for that worst case scenario. And it's a cyclone not to be taken lightly. It's something that you should be taking seriously. I've read plenty of comments about how there's lots of newcomers in Mackay and Townsville as well. So if this is your first cyclone, it'll be a rough impact. It will be a scary impact, as with all tropical cyclones. Just make sure you're staying as safe as possible. You've got your canned food ready, or your non-perishable food ready. You've got your plenty of water supplies ready. You've got fuel for the generator rather, and you've got your working radio where you can tap into the cyclone channels and the ABC channels as well, so you can get access to the latest information regarding this cyclone. But we'll be watching these wind observations in the Coral Sea like a hawk, seeing any changes or increases as this storm comes ashore. Expect maximum wind gusts of around 150 kilometers an hour around the landfall site. They could cause some pretty significant damages to property, roof failures, blown away carports, blown away trampolines. It's certainly a risk that we see these wind gusts above 150 kilometers an hour at this point. So yeah, we'll be watching the forecast very closely. Make sure you subscribe for the morning update tomorrow morning, and also subscribe for future systems around the Australian region, and also thunderstorm coverage as well. But that's all from me, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.